Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's RBC Tuesday at noon, RBC Music at Noon concert. It is Tuesday. My name is Dr. Karen DeBella. I'm chair of the music department at Brock University. Thank you for tuning in live from the Recital Hall stage in the Performing Arts Centre. Thanks to Rob in the booth for managing the tech today. He does a great job, and I know it sounds great on your end too. Today we have the pleasure of listening and watching two of our department lesson instructors, Tim White on trumpet and Lesley Kingham on piano, who also teaches organ for us. So we have a multi-talented group here today, and I know you're going to love today's concert. I think we have a few visuals too to go with this, so that'll be fun to watch. Next week, we have a broadcast that's pre-recorded. We have another Walker String Quartet performance next week. It was supposed to be a live performance with me and Vera Alexieva, but we got a little busy. So instead, Walker String Quartet with Vera and the quartet, and it will be a video of the premiere of, I think it's Looking in Windows by Mark Steiger. So please come back to this exact same channel next week at noon to catch that broadcast. It's going to be great. So without further ado, I'm very pleased to welcome Tim White and Lesley Kingham.
Our opening piece has a very much a multinational flavor to it. It was written by an Italian trumpet player by the name of Nini Rosso, and this arrangement is by Guglielmo Brezza. He was known as Willy Brezza. So Nini Rosso was actually a jazz trumpet player primarily, born in Italy. And he wrote this piece in 1965. The piece was written to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the liberation of the Netherlands. So during World War II, in 1940, the Nazis occupied the Netherlands. It was a very bad time in their history. 1945, they were liberated, and this was brought about largely by Canadian troops. And the Allies, of course. So the German forces surrendered unconditionally to Canadian General Charles Foulkes. That was in 1945. So 20 years later, this piece was written. The source of the piece, it's actually based on an Italian bugle call, which is called Il Silenzio, the silence. So it's the call you would hear at the end of the day. Every country has their own bugle call for the end of the day, or here in Canada we use the British version of the last post. Americans play taps, and the Italians play Il Silenzio at the end of the day. And it's the same bugle call that Tchaikovsky heard when he was visiting Rome. He went there with his brother to get away from some of the troubles that he was having in Russia. But so he ended up there, and his brother describes what they heard through, they were staying in a hotel that was near Italian military barracks, and so they heard this bugle call. They could hear it through the window of their hotel room, and Tchaikovsky actually used it to open his Capriccio Italien, which is a piece based on various Italian themes. Some of them he actually heard while he was in Rome. Some of them he got from manuscripts. So I'm going to just play the bugle call that is known as Il Silenzio, and it sounds very much like the American taps, because that's when I first heard the piece a little while ago. I thought it was it must be based on American taps, but it's actually based on the Italian call. So I'm going to play the actual bugle call. So I'll just move the microphone to the side a bit. So that may be something similar to what Tchaikovsky heard. What he ended up writing for his Capriccio Italien sounded like this. that is how Capriccio Italien opens with that. It's actually written in a different key. I just played it in a higher key so that it would match the key of our first tune. So here is Nini Rosso's Il Silenzio. Okay, the next piece we're going to play is the Hummel Trumpet Concerto. Joseph Haydn was the music director at Esterházy, which is a very large estate in Hungary. And he was the music director, the Kapellmeister for Esterházy. When Haydn retired, the position was taken over by Johann Nepomuk Hummel. And Hummel, as a tribute to Haydn, wrote his trumpet concerto. This concerto actually was lost for many years after it was written. And a student of my teacher, Armando Catala, one of his students, found the manuscript in the British Library. For some reason, it ended up there. Catala then edited the music, and he was the first person to ever record the piece, and he recorded it in the key of E, which was the original key of the piece. Today we're going to be playing it in E flat, which is usually how the piece is played. So it was written for the keyed trumpet. So Rob, if you could show the slide, and then we'll get a look at the keyed trumpet. You can see that it looks like a trumpet, but it has these keys on the bell that look somewhat like keys that you would see on a saxophone or a clarinet. And this allowed the instrument to play in different keys and to play chromatic passages. And prior to this, it was not possible to do this on any brass instrument. Natural instruments, in other words, instruments that had no valves, were used in the Baroque era, and I'm going to play a piece from that era next, and I'll talk about the natural trumpet then. But the keyed trumpet was a new instrument. It was actually invented by the performer Anton Weidinger. Weidinger performed Haydn's concerto on the keyed trumpet, and then he performed Hummel's concerto. The keyed trumpet never really caught on as a standard instrument in the orchestra, because shortly after it was invented, the valve came into use, and that's what modern instruments use. They are all valved instruments. But it sounds very good, the keyed trumpet, but it's actually a specialist instrument, so some players play it, but you have to specialize in it and learn how to play it. So Dr. Henry Meredith, who's in London, Ontario, he plays it, and I've played concerts where he's been playing the keyed bugle or a keyed trumpet. So it does sound like a very good instrument. And it just didn't catch on once the valve came into use. So here's the Hummel concerto. It's written in 3 movements, typical classical structures, forms. For the first movement, it starts with a rocket theme, a rapidly ascending arpeggio, and then it goes through the usual development, recapitulation, and all of that. Then there's the slow movement, and the third movement is a rondo, a very upbeat rondo. So here is Hummel's trumpet concerto. Thank you very much. So that was the Hummel Trumpet Concerto. There weren't a lot of concertos or trumpet sonatas written in the classical era, so these are one of a handful of pieces that came from that era. After that, as we get into the 20th century, composers, even in the Romantic era, most of the brass writing was for the orchestra. Very famous orchestral parts written by composers such as Mahler in the Romantic era. But when we get into the 20th century, then composers realized that they could make good use of the brass instruments as solo instruments. Prior to that, in the Baroque era, yeah, there's lots of repertoire from the Baroque era, particularly from Italian composers, German, French. So we find lots of repertoire there. And we're going to play a piece by an English composer, probably England's most famous composer, if not most. He's right up there, Henry Purcell. So he wrote this trumpet sonata that we're going to play. I'm going to be playing this one on the modern piccolo trumpet. I'll just get that instrument. So here it is. It's like a tiny trumpet. It's got 4 valves, actually. I'll talk about why it has 4 valves as opposed to 3. But prior to this instrument, well, but actually in the Baroque era, the natural trumpet was in use. So, Rob, if you could show the slide of the natural trumpet, you can see there that it's a very long trumpet. No valves are on that instrument. All the notes changes had to be done with the player's lips or the embouchure and the flow of air. So without the valves, the instrument could only play in one key or possibly very closely related 2 keys, possibly if the composer was creative. Bach was very good at that. Playing in a Bach cantata, you're playing along, all of a sudden you find yourself in a new key. But somehow Bach knew exactly what the instrument could do and knew how it could fit into these little slight key changes. So most of the Baroque repertoire is based on a diatonic or major or minor scales. The instrument is long because in the upper register, that's where the natural harmonics allow the player to actually play a scale. In the case of the bugle, you can only play 5 notes on the bugle. You can play the root, the 5th, and then the octave, the 3rd, and the 5th, so you can play a little arpeggio at the top of the instrument. But on the natural trumpet, because it's been elongated, now you can play in the upper register, and that's where you can actually play a major scale. Okay, thanks for showing the slide, Rob. So back now to the piccolo trumpet. Again, you can see 4 valves. The reason why I need the 4th valve is so that I can play the bottom note of the arpeggio. So I'll get here. So there's the low arpeggio that I can play. And then I can use the valves to actually play the scale. But I need that 4th valve in order to get the low fundamental. Of course, that note is available on the natural trumpet, but not available on the piccolo trumpet, so they've added the 4th valve so that I can now play in the that low note, which is the fundamental note of the arpeggio. Okay, so here is Purcell's sonata for trumpet. It's in 3 movements. The first movement is an upbeat allegro. The second movement features Lesley playing the slow movement. And then the third movement is very interesting. It kind of takes the form of a canzone where the voices all enter in different octaves. So we get here's some of Purcell's polyphonic writing. So here is Henry Purcell's sonata for trumpet in D major. Before we finish here, I just want to thank Dr. DeBella and the music department for all their assistance. I want to thank Lesley for all the work that she's put into this recital. A lot of piano playing, obviously, on this one. We're going to finish with one other piece. So this is from Les Miserables. It's a piece that I've been asked to in the past play for Remembrance Day, which will soon be upon us. And so here is Bring Him Home. Thank you. Karen, did you want to say anything to finish off? Or?